All right, so I've got a bunch of former students that I have this bad feeling are going to try to do the milk crate challenge, and this is my best effort at trying to convince them not to. The milk crate challenge is based on physics, not feasible. Now, yes, I know a few people have raced over to the other side to somehow make it. Give me a chance to explain what's really going on and why this is by physics logic so difficult and it's supposed to be. Now, whenever you see these different crates, I want you to notice is that I've got these crates, they're all, next to each other, but I emphasized a little bit of a gap in between. The reason I'm emphasizing that is because based on the way milk crates are constructed, they can interlock going up and down, but they can't interlock next to each other. That's just not how they're made. Now, whenever you are going to be like on a particular, milk crate, if you are stepping upward onto this crate, what's happening is what you're doing is you're putting your force onto the top of this crate over a certain amount of time. What that's called is impulse. Now, impulse is going to be saying that there's a certain force based on stepping on it over a certain amount of time that ends up translating into a momentum. Now, that momentum is going straight into the ground. Now, the thing is the ground's not going to move. So this impulse, all it's going to do is push toward the ground, and you end up stabilizing yourself. That's because your foot is fairly close to the middle of the crate, but also is over the entire base of the crate. So therefore, your first step, pretty secure. Now, when you go from this crate to the next one, there are a couple things that are going to be happening. Now, first of all, your front foot, as it's going to the next one, what you're doing is you're actually stabilizing yourself in a sense. You see, as you are moving forward, the crate wants to go forward, but it also wants to rotate. You see, what's happening is you're creating a bit of a force, a momentum going in a rotational way because you're going forward. Now, with that though, is these crates, even though they're not interlocked, they're still creating a little bit of stability for this back one. Okay? So that crate is doing fairly well because even though you're moving forward, the crate isn't going to be going forward with you. Now, on top of that is that as you put your foot on top of this next set of crates, what's happening is you are slowly increasing the weight that you put there from putting your foot on there to lifting yourself up and then end up standing on top of that. Now, by the way, this is going to matter later. Your foot doesn't have to be exactly in the center when you're going upward because you are, again, creating a downward impulse. And because it is over the base of the crates, therefore, it's still over the center of gravity, and it's still going to go straight into the ground. So going on to this next one is going to end up still being fairly stable. So the whole time, you're still stable. Now, what if you stopped here? You paused. Now, granted, this is only 2 crates, so it's not going to be that much of an issue, but when you stop, anytime you stop on the top of one of these crates, what's going to happen is that your body naturally moves. It doesn't stay perfectly still. Now, let me show you bird's eye view of these crates. So if you're on top of one of these crates, and let's say you just pause there, your body, because you have a heartbeat, because you have a pulse, because you are just naturally human, then what's going to happen is that you can be going in all 4 directions. Now, if you stop on the top of a crate, the forward and the back ones, they don't want to move as much because you've got other crates in the way. However, you don't have any crates left and right. That's why when somebody pauses on the top, the crates want to fall outside of the cluster. Okay. Now, you've got a couple of options, is that as you're going from crate to crate to crate, you can just keep going, and based on the same model, you're going to continue to stabilize yourself each time. Or you could try to pause at the top of one of them, But if you try to pause, you're going to be unstable until you get to the center. Now, at this point, you might be thinking a couple things. Number one, hopefully you've noticed that going from this center pile to the next one is where a large percentage of people fall, or just even being on top of that middle one. Now with that is because of a couple things. So first of all, if you stop, when you're looking forward, you might be likely to, vibrate and fall off of there. But also is as you are coming back down, you're not creating the same level of stability. Okay. First of all, your foot that was on the top here, notice that because you're coming down, that back foot wants to push backward. That back foot wants to push backward. Notice there's no crate there. This has a tendency to rotate backward. Because essentially imagine you've got your ground here and your foot is pushing backward and there's enough of a gap here to get momentum so that these crates would want to move. Second, remember when we were going up, we created an impulse. Well, the thing is that when you first put your foot down onto this crate here, what's going to happen is you're going to create an initial impulse, and that's fine. That's fairly stabilizing. But the problem is that you haven't moved your other foot. Now, previously when we were going up, moving your other foot just kept the impulse consistent the whole time. But this time, by putting a foot down, you then go from an impulse to zero impulse until you put your next foot over. And then you're creating a secondary impulse. Now, the problem with that is that because of the fact that you're on the ground and the fact that milk crates are made out of hard plastic, there's going to be a natural reverberation. There's a natural bounce back, okay? The thing is that the pressure you push down on it, it deformed it slightly, but then it's likely to bounce back up again. It's very tiny. It's a very tiny bounce back, but it is enough that it destabilizes you between your front foot and your back foot. Now, there are other reasons why it is that you're much less stable at this moment in time, okay? On top of that is, remember previously, even though you're going forward, the crates don't want to go forward because there's a crate there. Now, there's no crate right there. So the top of the crate has a likelihood to want to rotate forward. So you've got another thing that is destabilizing you. Now, there's even more than that. Remember previously we mentioned that it's not as important that your foot is right in the center. See, that's because any place on here, you're still over the base of the milk crate. So with that then is pushing downward just naturally stabilizes it. However, because of this impulse issue, impulse, let go, impulse again, what's happening is that, because remember that second impulse, you lifted your foot up, which released the pressure, and then brought it back down, brings another impulse. Okay, so impulse for your front foot, then let up, then impulse for your back foot, because your body was lifting it upward and then back down, whereas previously you lifted it up and then forward, but now it's up and then back down. So with that then, is on top of that issue, is that these crates still want to go forward now because of rotational momentum. But even more than that is putting your foot down anywhere except for the center, you've got much more likelihood to end up creating that rotational momentum. See, it wasn't an issue before because the other crates kind of helped it stabilize. But now, because you don't have that extra crate right there, now the fact, if your foot is not directly in the center, then you're more likely to create a rotational momentum that might go this way, or even forward. Not as much backward because of the other crates. But now, let's say you're like, well, what if I put one foot right in the middle? Well, the problem is that if you bring your other foot down, it will not be in the middle because your first foot is in the middle, and therefore it will destabilize it. Well, what if I balance both of my feet. Well, the problem is that to balance both of your feet, you have to put one of them down first, and you're going to be off balance. So either you're off balance when you first put a foot down, or you're off balance when you put a second foot down. Now you might be saying, well, then I have an easy solution. Just go ahead and put my foot in the middle, each one going forward. So I go boom, boom, boom. Easy peasy, right? And that's typically what we end up seeing. However, what you notice is that when that happens, is that each of these becomes more and more destabilized. And why is that? Because now your whole body is creating momentum. So because your whole body is creating a momentum going forward instead of one step at a time, your whole body creating momentum means that all of these crates want to go backward with more and more force. Yes, they are being somewhat held by the crates, but now you're creating more force for them to have to try to stabilize against. And you are going forward and your body's creating a momentum that now it wants to go any which way. So the problem is that the only solution is that once you get up to the top, then you have to briefly pause and then go as quickly as you can downward. But going as quickly as you can downward is just as reckless as it sounds. Because then every foot you put down, if it is not perfectly in a certain center portion, then you'll end up having all these milk crates wanting to go every which way. And that's why you can barely do it when you have 4 in the middle. But once you get more than that, it's just too much for any single person to handle because of the physics of the stability and the impulse, everything going forward. Because remember, when you're at the top, if we were looking at this as like a cross section, that is the least stable portion. But everything after that, you're creating, notice whenever people try to make it, they have to launch themselves. But every single crate tower behind them is falling over as they do so. So that is why it is that based on physics, the Milk Crate Challenge, it's like a carnival game. It looks simple enough, but in reality, it is actually designed to work against you so that you don't win. And it's also ridiculously dangerous. So please don't do it. And if you're tempted to do it, don't. Just do something else, okay? Like pick up a hobby, read a book, get a girlfriend, something, anything else. Do not do the Milk Crate Challenge. Just don't do it. It's not a good idea. Okay, thank you.